What's up, workforce? Brian here.
Chris here.
And we've got I think, an interesting topic that we've been kind of kicking around on stream for the last couple days, and that's the leveling content, level synced content. Chris, you have been streaming pretty much almost every day, and you're leveling up all the tanks. And the top link, guys, if you don't follow Chris on Twitch, or us on Twitch in this case, be sure to go and check him out. He is working Dark Knight, Paladin. You've already got Warrior, and then you've already got Gunbreaker, right? So it's just Dark Knight, Paladin?
Yeah, but I'm also leveling over in WoW as well. So I'm working up. So I've got four of them in Shadowlands or just waiting to go through the scenario into Shadowlands, so 50 or higher. And level cap is 60. And then I've got Paladin at 35. And then today we got Death Knight to 41. So home stretch.
Right. So real good progress overall with that. And for me, I've got everything leveled in Final Fantasy XIV. I just pushed out the Ninja and Monk controller guides. And actually going to be reworking Summoner and Red Mage, doing a couple of different things, especially with all the adjustments that have happened since I've played it. But all that being said, we are having a vastly different experience when it comes to the leveling content of this game and what it doesn't do and what we hope 6.0 might try to address. And maybe we're starting to see kind of hints at this with Bozja are already upping you to level 80. Because one of the things that came to mind when watching you play as a Paladin in Bozja, not having Paladin at cap, you weren't really fully aware of the rotation and the new skills that you were just kind of thrust upon, unbeknownst to you in this case. And so that really got the wheels spinning, and this is something we've been kind of just talking about over the last couple days on Twitch, and we figured we'd just sit down and just kind of make it an official discussion. So, guys, if you have any thoughts about this, let us know your thoughts as well, because, I don't want to sit here and present like this is the only way that Square Enix can do this in 6.0, or Brian's going to be frustrated. Not at all. But I think when I look at the core and how the game has evolved, I've come to, I think, a couple of conclusions of what I want to see. And before I jump into what I want to see, Chris, you're more in the thick of it with leveling right now. Is there anything that you would like to see kind of there would be an immediate improvement to your overall leveling experience?
If you could level sync the way we do with Bozja, all beast tribes, so that I had basically a set of dailies, so that I could just go do that the same way you do with Fates. Mm-hmm. You just kind of sync to that level, or they just granted current level experience. Just let me one-shot stuff. Who cares? Just as a source of kind of, especially for, I'm doing tanks, so I have fairly fast queues, mm-hmm. but, even then, they're not always instant. And so for DPS, roulettes are really just not a great option, especially to kind of get you to that 71. And so as a form of content that kind of like with Fates, this time we put bicolored gemstones in there to kind of encourage people to go do that content. I think there's a lot of old beast tribes, and there's a lot of content there to be enjoyed. And the reason you may not is you're like, well, I don't have anything in that level band. Mm-hmm. And so, I'm not high enough, or I'm too high. And so very quickly you just fly through the Ananta levels, and then you're like, oh, I never got my elephant. And it's like, well, why not? It's like, oh, because I'm trying to level my jobs, and that doesn't help me get there. It's actively in the way of the goals that I have within the game, so it just kind of gets tossed off to the side.
That's actually a really good one I didn't think of. One of the things that I really appreciated what Shadowbringers did was bring in that level syncing for the quests, but it was mm-hmm. only in that expansion and beyond. And if they ever went back and did that, that opens up a whole range of things that you can go and do. I still have a couple of zones that are not quote unquote cleared, but I have cleared the Shadowbringer zones. I've cleared, it's sure. Anything that was hey, this works and it doesn't matter what level I'm at, let's go ahead and get it done. And that's actually a really great open world piece of content that helps structure it. I think my first one would be, it comes down into learning the rotation of the job. And I know the counter argument, which I'll present right now. I wish we had our full kit, not the 80 kit, but our full kit to what we've earned. So if I'm a level 70,
yes.
And I'm in a level 15 dungeon, yes. 16 dungeon, I have my full level 70 kit because I've unlocked it. And right. I think that it should be nerfed to some degree, but that way as a player, I could practice my rotation so that when I step into a 71 dungeon and 72 dungeon, it doesn't end up throwing right. me. For some reason, if I got synced down always into a handful of leveling dungeons and hadn't seen any of the new skills. Thus, right. there wouldn't be a massive whoa, what is this skill? I haven't really seen it yet. And the counter argument, when I presented this idea, people were worried that would just break the dungeons. And the thought that I had is that I think Shadowbringers broke all the previous content anyway. I remember running old content at the launch of Shadowbringers and going, wow, this is like, we're just like hot knife through butter all of this. It's done.
Yeah,
like
unless there's a white mechanic, unless there's something on a boss that must be not ignored. The healers keep people up, the DPS melts things down, the tanks pull hard, nobody loses threat. Like, yeah, it just handles itself.
Yeah, so I think that we've already somewhat seen that. Now, obviously, the risk would be that going too far, and thus, regarding, like, I'm not sitting here to present mathematics of this is the percentage of it should be done down, but I think that overall, like, when you get that skill, it should be something exciting, and then when you go and you play whatever content, it should actually change the way that you play, allowing you to practice, and thus allowing, because actually that's one of the things about it, is that's how the role actions work. Your role actions, once unlocked, are unlocked. Like, you don't have to sit here and, like, they don't, like, slot up as you level sync down, making level sync already somewhat, imbalanced.
Yeah, it definitely feels weird. So, like, as a Dark Knight, so I'm leveling solely through dungeons because tanks have that ability. So I'm doing my fairy dailies on my paladin every day because it's at 77, and then I'm doing all of my roulettes on my Dark Knight, just everything it can queue for, with the exception of at this point I'm no longer doing Guild Hest because they've let the experience fall to where it does nothing. Yeah. And as I do dungeons, let's say I'm eligible for 50 dungeons, the 40 of them are going to use less than my max set of skills, and then in the last 10 or so will get closer to my full set, and really only like the last 2 are high enough that I have a chance of using all but one of my abilities. And so what that means is as I level and that small percentage moves along, I'm really only ever learning the bottom 2/3 of my skills. Whatever the most recent skill I've learned is, I don't know what it does, and I continue to not know what it does until it's old news, until it's old enough that there's enough dungeons that it's eligible for that it's not just a 1 out of 50 or a 2 out of 50. It's like, you know what, 20% of the dungeons that you're queuing for are going to let you use that. And so I would agree with you. I would probably be a better tank. I'm trying to do this to become proficient in tanking, and like I'm getting better at tanking in old content, but then my frustrations with the job aren't fair. A, I'm not getting better at using my top abilities, and B, I'm saying stuff about jobs that just aren't true. I'm like, what I don't like about Dark Knights, they don't have any cooldowns, and that's because so much of the early levels they don't. But that doesn't mean they don't get cooldowns. I'm just not running content where I have them, and so I wiped in WoW today, and I had just gotten a new skill and I didn't know about it. But now that I know about it, because WoW has world sync, I will have it in every dungeon I run, because every dungeon is my level. And if I level mid dungeon, the whole level levels with me. I'm literally, the level is syncing to me. It's like unreal, in here in 14. And I think that there would be an advantage to going back and making dungeons function more in that like Unreal sense. And that like we get a chance to see real mechanics, we get a chance to see real dungeons in real groups. And as soon as you learn a skill, you have it from then on. The only exception being ultimates. Ultimates, I would say you go back, you learn it the old way.
Okay, that's a really good interesting point. That actually ties more into kind of an end game discussion perspective, which essentially is something that we've kind of talked on and that we've kind of been talking with a lot of the community about, as we've seen obviously Savage dropping a lot of people diving into that content, which is exciting because they have been starved for the longest time. And then at the same time, we see a massive right now break and gap in the community just waiting for February. And so kind of as an aside note, something that Chris and I will probably be putting out a video here on in a couple of days, looking at Yoshi P's like live letter, like his New Year's post, which he will post on the 1st. So we'll be talking about that. But then that leads us into February. And one of the cool things, and I was telling you about this on stream just a minute ago, is Yoshi P was saying how he's so impressed by what Ghost of Tsushima has done. He's been studying that game, and he's really excited to share with us, the community, not work together, but us, the global Final Fantasy community, more news on 16 and 14. Got a lot of really big announcements, is what he was teasing in recent interviews. And that kind of comes down to the overall, like, I think you brought up the questing, and I brought up the level syncing. I kind of want to pivot a little bit, because the other syncing thing that the game does is it forward syncs with Bozja. So that's the only piece of content right now that will take you like level 71 and make it like you're a level 80. What's your impression of how that works? Because obviously we've seen the gap. What's the other one?
PvP.
PvP.
PvP immediately puts you at the full PvP set of skills.
This game has PvP?
I hear about it. So apparently you find another invisible player and you wait a really long time and then it puts you in a place together.
Okay, that's good to know. So that's good. But obviously with PvP having an entirely different skill set, it is not something that pops to mind. But they were doing that first. They did that a while ago. So with that natural transition from PvP now into PvE with Bozja, I think it's a really good move. I think my only complaint about that system is it doesn't start earlier. Like, it would be something that if you guys aren't playing in Bozja right now, not a shocker. We actually just played Bozja this past week, and it was 5 of us, and we were in the zone all to ourselves. We ended up taking out a critical engagement with 5 people, and we posted the highlight up over on Game Club. So it was just insane. It was a lot.
Bozja.
It was so much fun in that regards, but and then the flip side of it is that we were finally able to hear from other people on our data center that, like, there was another instance that was a little bit more populated, so we were able to go jump in and finally get to play with somebody. The problem that we had with it was so slow. And what it does right is I think it lets you just jump in, use it for leveling content, use it for these other things. I think what it misses the point is that it could be used as an alternate form of leveling content and help with some of these gaps. Because I think what we saw was Savage pull a lot of players out of Bozja because they were either already capped, they've already got their mount or like whatever they're working towards. And it's that I think is also a massive kind of disappointment, weakness in this regards. Chris, I've talked a little bit. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I mean, Savage is almost a disservice to the rest of the community. And I don't mean we shouldn't have it. It's wonderful. But what ends up happening is anybody who doesn't like Savage kind of gets left behind because it's the hot thing right now. And so everybody's doing it that enjoys it. But that means everybody who doesn't enjoy it, depending on the content you queue for, there may not be enough people left over to really make that viable. In any one draw like that, MSQ does that, right? Somebody who plays this game for the gameplay, they play for glamour, they play for crafting, they have a lot of fun in all these other systems. When new MSQ drops, everybody goes and does that, you know? And so for that first, however long it takes, we get 10 hours worth of MSQ, which this last patch we really did. We got 10 hours between Eden, Stars Over Lit, and actual main story. We got like 10 to 12 hours of content. If that isn't what they play for, if they just play to get to the raids, they skip all the stories, they blast through the raids, they jump into Savage groups, they do all the Savage, they get out the other end, and all the people who maybe play 2 or 3 hours a week have 3 weeks of normal stuff. They're like, hey, I know you're only on for a little bit. We should go do something. Oh yeah, I'm in story. Like, they're just left. And so like it happens every way, but like this Savage tier is so good as a set of Savage content that it's drawn a lot of people in that are on their very first Savage or their first Savage this expansion. They're, and there's people doing Savage in Party Finder, which does happen, but like it's a lot. So I don't know if it's more than typical, but it definitely feels like this Savage tier is getting a ton of attention, and that attention didn't just go away after one reset. Didn't just like it seems to be lingering maybe longer than at least I expected, which is good for that piece of content, but very bad for things like people who are like, I just want to do Bozja. And it's like, well, you're alone. Like, I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah.
But it's slowly recovering. My first time into Bozja, right after, while Savage was launched, there were only 9 people in the zone and there were no other zones. Now we're like, okay, now it's getting to like a zone in a little bit. So if you get stuck in a little bit, zone out, zone back in, see if you can get to the group. So I look forward to post Savage as a non-Savage player, where there's people doing what I'm doing, but I'm excited that they're enjoying what they're doing.
So we've put, a couple of our ideas that we've had here, just at the start of this video, guys. And really the call is like, what changes would you like to see to leveling content, level sync content? I think, Chris hit the nail on the head with the quests opening up previous zones for that style, because all of a sudden you could use any beast tribe, so you can kind of get a little bit of variety in the environment, especially if you've missed a beast tribe or two, and flying coming to the AR zones makes that, immensely more.
I want to go back and do them.
Way more accessible, and then the fact that you could then feed yourself that XP would be really interesting to see. But those are just our ideas. Obviously, me wanting, keeping my skills, because that would help with just hot bars and things like that. and a major rework to Summoner. But that's a whole different topic for another day.
Well, at that point, we might as well say I also want post-level experience usage and Paragon levels. And let's just build a new game.
I do want Paragon
start
levels.
to wish for a little too much at that point.
Oh yeah. Well, anyway, so what's coming up, guys? We've got a lot of content planned here for January. We wanted to kind of get this video out because we've been talking around this idea. But let us know what your thoughts are in the comments below. And it looks like I've got some parent duty to take care of. For Work to Game, my name is Brian.
My name's Chris.
Thanks so much for being here, and I'll see you soon.
See you in stream.